Mr. Sitawipin, I'd like to save some time and move to Ms. Jessica Tan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With inflation and households facing rising prices in many areas such as energy and food, many of our residents continue to express concerns with the higher cost of living, and I think many members have expressed that as well. The Goods and Services Tax, or GST, is a tax on consumption. So although Singapore's GST rate, even at 9%, is amongst the lowest in the world, an increase in GST will still impact all Singaporeans and all Singaporean households, regardless of income levels. Hence, this is adding to the anxiety of many of our residents over the cost of living. While none of us likes an increase in GST, it is reassuring to know that with the assurance package, the majority of Singaporean households will not feel the impact of the GST tax increase for at least 5 years, and for the lower income families, the assurance package will delay the impact of the GST increase by about 10 years. I thank DPM Lawrence Wong for recognizing the challenges and the inflationary pressures that Singaporeans are facing, and for his reassurance that the adequacy of the assurance package will be assessed, and if the situation requires more support will be provided, as what he's announced today, the increase of the 1.4 billion in the assurance package to stand at 8 billion today. So if the situation arises with the sustained trend of rising prices and inflation, I do hope that there will be timely reviews and adjustments to rising cost of living with the assurance package as it's dispersed over 5 years. This is to ensure that the support given does indeed provide the extent of the support as it is intended to offset the increase in the additional GST. In my budget debate speech earlier this year, I had highlighted the point about the eligibility criteria for support, which I wish to reiterate. Annual value of residence or your home address is used as the main criterion for means testing and eligibility for many of our support schemes. I agree that we need to do means testing and that those who are less well off and vulnerable must get more support. In the cash payout component of the assurance package, there is a change in the eligibility criteria, where eligibility and the amount of cash payout component of the assurance package is based on annual income and the property ownership instead of the annual value of residence. What this means is that with the cash payout of the assurance package, every adult Singaporean aged 21 years and above, depending on assessable annual income and home ownership, will get a total cash payout of between 700 and 1,600 over 5 years from December this year to 2006 to offset the additional GST expenses. This means that retirees who do not have an income and those who are not well off and live with well-meaning relatives or friends in private condos or houses who usually would not be eligible for such payouts will now be getting the cash payouts to offset the additional GST increase. I was looking at the $700, the lowest of the categories in this payout, just to get a sense of what that means for the individual. So let me just give you a back of the hand calculation, not absolutely accurate, but gives you a sense of what it translates to. What it means really is someone falls into category of getting $700 over the five years. What it means is that for each year, that person will receive $140 offset, about. And that means that $140 will offset 2% of GST increase over the 5 years, which effectively means that you can, for a spending of $580 for each individual, this is just the cash payout component, you will not be paying GST. Right? So it's not insignificant. It may not cover everything, but it's not insignificant, and it's also just one of the components. So while I do not disagree that the value of the property reflects one's means, I have seen the need for support among some of our residents who live in properties that are above the annual value threshold criteria. A point that I raised several times in this House is the application of the annual value criterion for those that live with their extended families in properties with annual values above the eligibility criteria of 21,000. These persons could be elderly parents or siblings who live with relatives as they need care or cannot afford housing. In several of these cases, they do not have means, but because of their residential address, they do not qualify for the various support schemes. So with the trend of smaller families as well, people marrying later, there are also many more couples who have to provide for both their young children and senior parents and relatives. Some call this the sandwich generation. I do have such families in my constituency who live in private properties with annual value between 21,000 to 30,000. I would like to repeat my ask for a refinement of the use of the annual value criterion for eligibility for support schemes. For example, take the GST voucher, cash, or senior bonus in the assurance package. Seniors or retirees living in properties of annual value above 21,000 will not be eligible. I'm not asking that means testing or the annual value be removed. Don't get me wrong. What I'm asking is whether it can be calibrated to allow eligibility for those living with extended family members but don't own the property. Or can there be a higher AV threshold with a lower cash bonus for retirees that own the property but require support? For the sandwich generation, can there also be calibration to allow for higher AV thresholds to allow for eligibility for support schemes if they do meet the annual income criterion? For the sandwich generation who live in private properties, if the seniors that live with them or who they support are eligible for support schemes, this will help cushion some of the rising costs of care and the rising cost of living that many have expressed today. So although not directly related to the GST increase, ACTA's recent announcement of the lower fee caps for preschool from January next year at anchor operators and partner operators is indeed welcome, as it will help parents in the sandwich group manage costs. So I hope that the government will also continue to review and provide relevant relief in areas that can help the sandwich generation manage rising costs. We can expect that businesses too will be impacted by the increase in GST and will inevitably increase the cost of their products and services, and the consumer will ultimately bear the cost increase. Mr. Speaker, taking into consideration the assurance package and how it will delay the impact of the proposed GST increase for most Singaporeans, I support the bill. Together with the other tax measures in Budget 2022, it will give the revenue required to fund rising expenditures needed for social spending. The government's approach ensures that we start building the funding required today, now while delaying the impact of the GST for most Singaporeans. I've heard quite a bit of the speeches, and there were quite a lot of asks to delay the GST increase. Effectively, if we look at not just the GST increase on its own, but the GST increase together with the other reliefs, both the assurance package as well as the cost of living and all the other packages, taking in totality, it does in fact delay, and in some cases actually for the lower income completely removes the impact of GST increase. So I think let's not miss the bigger picture. The bigger picture is we need that funding. We can say delay the impact, but what about the funding? If we delay the GST, we delay the building out of the funding. So what do we do when we need it? Scramble and figure out something at that point in time? It's going to be quite tough. In my speech, I've given focus to the sandwich generation, as they have to care for both their young children and aged parents and relatives and will bear greater financial strain with rising costs. While many do live in HDB flats and qualify for most of the components of the assurance package, there are those that live in private property that are above the annual value threshold for eligibility. I've also highlighted seniors living with relatives in private property but do not own these properties. These seniors are not eligible for the GST voucher or special senior bonus, but may be less well off than a senior living in a HDB flat that they own but eligible for the GST cash voucher, senior bonus. So with the rising costs and higher cost of living, I ask that we review and calibrate the annual value eligibility criterion for appropriate support schemes for these segments. All said and done, while we are debating the need to increase GST and to provide support for those that need support, let us not lose focus on the need to continue to keep our economy strong and to provide quality jobs for Singaporeans. This, together with the right support for those who are disadvantaged, will ensure good opportunities for all to do well. And I think that is what we're all debating today, not just the GST increase. Thank you.